Hi, Lynette Holloway, News One Senior Editor, here today with News One contributors China Dickerson and Kwame Jackson. Today we're here to talk about China's article about how Melania Trump stacks up so far to Michelle Obama. Great topic, China.
Yeah, thank you. So about a couple of weeks ago, you brought up to me this great topic comparing Melania and the First Lady. I thought it was awesome, so I immediately went into research about some of their backgrounds. Both of them actually come from very modest beginnings. One, of course, international, the other in Chicago. But as they started to get older, Michelle ended up marrying a law professor. Melania ended up marrying a real estate a person who, is making lots of money off of real estate in New York City. And as they, shifted into their professional lives, there's been quite some criticism, particularly with Michelle Obama as First Lady, that I think leads a little into race and has other implications. So, so I wrote about their comparison.
Right, and everyone knows Kwame Jackson here is a former contestant on The Apprentice, and he's here today to also talk about Melania. And you've actually met her.
I've had a chance to meet, I guess, 3 out of the 4 personalities that we're talking about. So I've had a chance to meet President Obama on several occasions, obviously the current President Trump, and then Melania in that same capacity. The only person I haven't had a chance to meet is Michelle. So, we're going to let you guys chime in with expertise on that.
Right. And so what was it like to meet her?
Melania?
Yes.
It's funny because I consider her a very silent lady. I mean, obviously physically beautiful and all that great stuff and former model, but she was pleasant. She was very reserved, didn't speak a lot, kind of speak when spoken to, I guess a little bit old school, but definitely didn't get any kind of negative vibes from her in any capacity, but she seemed like a nice person, very, chill, and, had I guess, her husband's back.
Right, and one of the genesis for this article was because you were looking at Melania gets a lot of criticism. Yeah. She just arrived at the White House. She flicked her husband's hand away on their first foreign trip. And, but Michelle Obama, there was a lot of racial stigmatism. And so do you guys want to talk a bit about that? It's clearly racism, right?
Yeah, I think, as the first black woman, First Lady, and President Obama, of course, the first black male, he received a lot of criticism. They even took it as far as their children, as their daughters, remarking on, them not being presidential kid enough. When we were first introduced to the first daughters, they had their hair in braids, had natural hair. People criticized that. And they've gone as far as death threats.
It's a tough situation. And obviously we know that, Michelle, for a lot of folks, represents the epitome of class. She's educated, Princeton, Harvard Law School. She's somebody who gets stuff done, but I think that she suffers from, that same stigma that a lot of black women suffer from, which is your competence can be a drag or a weight on your ability to ascend and your ability to connect with people. So you have to kind of balance that back and forth all the time. And then you look at the initial article that came out on the cover of the New Yorker magazine with the Afro puffs and the gun and the fist bump. They're always trying to paint people into that corner. And I think Michelle did a great job of, when they go low, we go high.
And I think it'll be interesting. I don't think, you all can correct me if I'm wrong, they've come out with approval ratings for Melania. But Michelle Obama, it appears to me, could maybe run for president of the United States because people are just so in love with her despite the racism and the sexism and the misogyny against her.
Yeah, I think if she takes some time for a breather and just kind of collects herself, I think that the country will continue to be in love with her, and I think she definitely has a future in politics.
Absolutely. So do you think it's a fair comparison? Do you think it's fair to
between Melania and Michelle? I mean, it's apples to oranges.
And Melania hasn't been in that long.
Yeah. Well, but of course, as soon as Michelle hit the White House, her fashions, before she even hit the White House, they were comparing her to Jackie O, all of them. Yeah. And we were talking about Dolly Madison earlier.
Yeah, I would say if there's a comparison, I would compare more Michelle to a Hillary in terms of levels of competence, education, experience in politics, and kind of, their overall class level, etc. Melania and Michelle, to me, is apples and oranges. I mean, one was like you said, former model, shrinks from the spotlight, doesn't have some of the skills of a Dolly Madison to kind of hold parlor and move policy and build relationships. So yeah, they're just apples and oranges for me.
And traditionally, first ladies have had an agenda. When you said shrinking from the, they've had an agenda. They've been proactive about, Laura Bush with libraries and education and reading, Michelle Obama with health and fitness. They've been very outward about this is what I want to work on using my platform. Melania, I've heard her talking about immigration, but I'm not so sure she's going to be as aggressive.
Cyberbullying is supposed to be her platform issue. Okay. Obviously, she just got to the White House, moving a little bit later than her husband, so we shall see how she progresses on that. But obviously, going back to Michelle, I participated in Let's Move. I'm a marathoner. I'm somebody who definitely believed that her agenda in terms of trying to move fitness forward for a generation of kids who were struggling with youth obesity is on the forefront of where we need to be going as a country. So,
and it's pretty clear that Melania admires Michelle Obama.
Yes, I think she does.
Copies her speech.
Well, she says she didn't know that was done, right? She says that was something.
People push back on me. I actually don't think she knew.
No, I don't think she knew either. It wasn't nefarious, but also that level of ignorance also shows maybe a level of incompetence.
So. Right, and so, but it must be hard to follow on the heels of a Michelle Obama, just like it must be difficult, and it's debatable that that Trump following on the heels of Obama, who was so popular and so skilled, and so that's why he keeps striking out at Obama.
And to be clear, when I wrote the article, I did some instances of how Michelle has been talked about in the media and Melania. I don't think anything like with Kathy Griffin and holding the head up of Donald Trump. I don't think any of that is cool.
Yeah, bridge too far.
I don't think the criticism about Melania and her nude photos. People have to do a lot of times what they have to do to survive in this country. Right. So none of that is acceptable. I think it just came out a lot more toward Michelle.
Yeah, and I think that her agenda will be judged, over the next couple of years. We'll see how Melania continues to blossom or not blossom, or whether she stays in the White House bubble and really just stays as a homebody and doesn't have the ability to drive some of the larger social issues and conversations like a Michelle did.
We have some questions from our Facebook live stream. One of them is, how do you all feel about Omarosa signing the letter to the CBC? Honorable Omarosa Manigault.
Well, you worked with her.
Funny. My life always circles back to Omarosa, isn't that? And so, and I was talking about this earlier, but I have a little bit of an indictment with our community in terms of putting Omarosa in the position that she is now, when we thought it was cute and it was funny, and now we see her in the White House being our African-American outreach lead, and we're kind of like, how'd that happen? And I'm like, it's because you made it happen. So I think that we have to kind of check ourselves on that, but, signing, the Honorable Omarosa is typical, the shenanigans that we've seen from her over and over and over again, and I think now maybe we're finally putting our foot down and saying, this isn't cool, it's not funny, it's not cute, and we need to reclaim some of that power that we've given her to be a spokesperson for a community. I call it coonery. It is what it is.
I mean, I think she's taken advantage. Kwame reminded me that she worked at Howard University. They hire her as a marketing. I think she is the type. She's opportunistic. She takes sort of like the Kardashians. So like they use what they can. Oh, she's going to kill me for that comparison. But they do what they have to do. And if that means, at first being advocate strongly for Hillary Clinton, because she actually held fundraisers for Hillary Clinton.
See, that's a good memory jog.
And when Hillary decided to run, since they didn't pull her into the campaign, she went over to the other side.
I did not know that.
Yeah, she did.
Right. And how do you think Omarosa plays into the conversation of Melania versus Michelle?
Yeah, I think that's
it's just race.
I think that's a deep piece, because I talked about how there haven't been a lot of African-American female faces in the White House. So you've got Valerie Jarrett, you've got Condoleezza Rice, you had the National Security Coordinator, why am I drawing a blank on her name? Susan Rice. And obviously Omarosa is not at that sphere of power, but she's still an African-American visible face in the White House. And so people have these data points, and they're looking at these 3 or 4 women, and they're surmising, where they want to go with it. And I think that it's a tough conversation because I don't think we should be supporting that as our profile at the White House level.
I wish someone could get to her and talk to her and say, "Hey, girl,
in the ear,
listen, like you could be doing all of the things for us. You have this position of power. Come on, you got in, now you're in. Let's figure it out." Because maybe having to be a little coon to get in, but now that you're in,
well, we all wear the mask to some degree, right? And we talked about that. So it's disappointing to see that, and I think that we didn't talk really about the racial issue between Melania and Michelle and Omarosa, and this issue of Michelle being called an ape and a monkey.
Oh, it was just
her masculinity and showing her shoulders, and then Melania has obviously her photos or whatever. So when you look at the traditional kind of dog whistles, which aren't even dog whistles anymore, of racism, I think we still see that conversation pulling Michelle back into a bucket that we don't necessarily want to have her in.
But I think the racism hasn't really gone against Omarosa, because even though both Michelle and Omarosa are black, when you are unapologetically black, when you appear to be black, that's when folks really go for you.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Omarosa, even though she is, of African descent, she hasn't been outward about who she is and where she's from. And so folks are not giving her that same racial criticism.
It's like Jack Johnson, unforgivable blackness.
Yes.
If you're just black and that's cool with you, then that's going to create a certain amount of tension that a lot of people aren't comfortable with.
So do you think, in closing, we can kind of look at how Michelle will go down in history? I know we started out talking about her possibly running for president, but she will likely go down as one of the most popular.
She'll be fine.
I think if the Michelle chapter ends right now, obviously the history is written and it's great, but I think the arc of her future is so broad and so different that story is really just being written. We're now in chapter 2.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
sort of like Hillary Clinton?
Yeah.
Maybe?
I think Hillary Clinton's
toward
political
the
future
end
is done.
Yeah,
done.
toward the-
God bless her, but everyone's time passes.
Michelle will be fine.
Yeah.
She'll be great.
And Melania?
TBD. It's TBD. I think that we've seen some early data points, but we're only 6 months into the presidency.
And I don't think she wants to. Kwame's point of political. I think she wants to, to
She's
raise
not going
her
to be Dolly
son
Madison.
and,
She's not going to be Dolly Madison.
and live at the
Holding
top of the
like
Trump Towers.
tea and
and
in the
building
back room.
relationships to
No.
pull through policy. No, I think that if she can put a plank in cyberbullying, she's going to be raising her 10-year-old son. Good for her. Good for
And I
her.
actually think they'll probably get divorced very soon after.
But what would she have to gain by divorcing Donald Trump?
Money,
Nothing.
not having to deal with him, but dealing with his money.
All right,
That's
all
great.
right, all right.
Okay. In closing, check us out on News One Facebook and at newsone.com.